Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Adrienne Gilliard here with Sandra Bazan from the ELC's Inclusion Team, bringing you Behavior Bites Tidbits. Now, this month of July, we've been talking about the key things that contribute to the social emotional wellness and applying some teacher adaptations to support our children and to minimize a lot of the challenging behaviors that we see. So the topics that we've discussed so far are temperament and trauma. Our topic for today is anxiety and stress and what is typical and atypical in our young children. So signs of stress and anxiety in children, they often show up as physical changes or behavioral changes, and they all respond differently to stress depending on their age, their individual personalities, there's that temperament again, coping skills, and a lot of times parents and us as teachers, we can overlook these underlying issues that can be causing the behaviors. And we have some general categories, and that's separation anxiety, social anxiety, and generalized anxiety. And this is the general uncomfortable worries that children may experience. So Sandy and I are going to talk a little bit about what's typical anxiety and stress versus atypical anxiety and stress in our young children.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to realize that, our little people are just that, little people. They are subject to stress. They are subject to and prone to anxiety. And we have to come from a place of empathy and understanding and realizing that they don't have the skills that hopefully we as adults do have to cope with anxiety and stress, right? And so then how do we see it? We see it in behaviors. We always say behaviors are communication, is communication. There's got to be an underlying why. And so if we have that relationship built with the families and we understand and there's communication back and forth, it's really typical if you think about it. That separation anxiety, that's that first one, right? That we're going to talk about. And that's just a fear of being separated from their primary caregiver, the people that they know, they love, they're comfortable with. This is the child that, they're dropped off at school and you literally have to peel them off, whoever it is that's, dropping them off. There might be, it might be a fear of the unknown inside the classroom because it's the very first day. Or it might be, oh no, I know exactly what's happening. I'm not going to see my mom for a long time because now I've been at school for a couple of days and now I know what this means, right? So either way, Adrienne, that's super typical, right? When that happens, we've got a lot of strategies we talked about. We talked about, providing empathy, getting down on their level, providing comfort, understanding, visuals, that visual schedule,
and referring back to it as often as needed.
Right. Maybe we can even create, I don't know, a photo album, of special moments, special people, especially if this child is having a longer, hard time, because typically it takes about 2 weeks, if that, for children to kind of acclimate to the, oh, okay, bye mom, I'll see you later. And, it depends on their age, right? So that's a typical behavior. That separation anxiety is developmentally appropriate and typical. Do we still have to address it as teachers in the classroom?
Absolutely.
And that's where we begin our the very first encounter with our building rapport, right? So you receive a child whose first day, maybe it's the first time ever in maybe it's the first time outside of their house because they've been COVID bound and they were born in that time. And now mom feels, or the family feels it's time to go into preschool, and now they're 3, but they've never been in a social situation.
Right.
They've never been without mom or dad, right? And so think about how scary that might be, right? So those are the opportunities that we as educators, preschool educators, have it's like gold. You just have to polish it off a little bit, right? Those are the moments that we can really, really get down on their level, really offer comfort, really offer true understanding. Because if I put myself in that position, I feel the same way, right? Okay, so what happens when is it not typical then? this is the this and that, right? So that's very typical. What's not typical is a child who's continuously struggling and has been dropped off for you. First day was August, right? Because let's just say school starts in August. So August he comes in or she comes in, and now it's June and July, and we're still peeling that child off. At that point, there might be a real underlying anxiousness, there's something deeper, right? There's something more that we need to kind of assist the parents in diving into and maybe exploring, right? So that's one type of anxiety. Then you said that there's that other anxiety, right?
The
That's
social
social.
anxiety.
Oh, social anxiety, I know it well. And let me, you know what, I'm going to be very, very open and candid because I feel like we're family here and I'm just talking to you right now, right? So I never realized, I mean, I suffer from anxiety, right? I do. I have what they call generalized anxiety. We'll go into that in a little bit, right? But I remember feeling what I now know as anxious feelings, right? What I now recognize as an adult, what I now recognize my physiological responses to stress, to anxiety. I realized that I've had that same feeling from when I was a little girl. I'm talking about like my very first memories, right? But I didn't have the language.
Right.
And so understanding that as an adult and bringing myself back, I need to provide that language, which is another huge piece. When we talk about anxious feelings, right? It's really important, especially when we're talking with the littles, to describe what it feels like in your body. And so if you've never been anxious, go ahead and tap into somebody who is, and they can tell you, it feels like, I can't breathe, or it feels like I'm scared, or my heart is pounding, or I can't think straight because my brain is it's everywhere, or I'm shaking, or I'm sweating, or I'm just scared and I don't know why. When you ask that question, what's wrong, and they tell you,
I don't know.
I don't know, but their heart is, that there's real physiological, so I wish I would have had the language, and I'm glad now that I recognize it so that I can provide that language to the littles that come into my life, that I recognize that might be anxiety. How does that feel? What does that look like? And so when I talk to the little guys about it, right, I can label it, and I can say, oh, you must feel, are you anxious? Are you nervous? Those are you, or are you excited? Because anxiety and excitement kind of feel the same.
They kind of feel the same.
They kind of feel the same, except the root, the big feeling is excitement is like a little happy, like you're afraid because you don't know but you're looking forward to something. Anxiety is you have a fear of. There is I don't want to go. I don't know what it is, and I don't want to. Right. So that's the difference. Okay. And so going back to that social anxiety, it is what it is. I suffer from it now. I've suffered from it since I was a little, and this is the little child that runs behind mommy's leg or behind the teacher's leg whenever anybody new comes into the room, or when they're coming into a new environment, right? Or a new classroom, maybe they transitioned from, your room, and you went to the music room if you have one, and all of a sudden this little girl or this little boy is super shy and they're behind you, or they just shut down, or physically do one of these things, right? Have you ever seen a child that you're like, hi, and they're like, oh no, I can't handle, so that, okay, so what do we do for a situation like that, right? So we provide support. I want us to all think of, because I think I relate to anxiousness as an adult, and able to peel back the layers and realize that I've been dealing with this since I was a little kid. So what would have been super helpful for me then, which I use now as a technique, is I have a buddy. I don't go to places that, like, for the very first time, if without somebody that I feel comfortable with, right? Unless I'm feeling brave, but that's on me, right? So typically I'll say, hey, Adrian, we are going, right? So as the teacher in the classroom, I can be that buddy. I can understand and I can just offer support. And that all that means is close proximity. I'm right
Okay.
here. I'm right here.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
So, many moons ago, I had a neighbor that he was 3 years old at the time, and he was so sweet and so loving. But anytime you saw him in the neighborhood and you say, "Hey, Cordell," he would freeze in his tracks, put his head down, and he would not move from that spot. So, what do you do as support when they freeze?
Wow. See, that's an extreme case, right?
Okay.
So that's when you're starting. So I was gonna say, like, typical would be they're a little shy. Those are the slow to warm up temperaments,
Right.
right? That's a lot.
But
That's a lot.
this is an atypical. So
This
what do
is
we
this is more atypical. At that point, you have to kind of really, it's student specific. So for him, it might be that you can't come up to him that way
okay.
directly. You might, I don't know, maybe have a puppet, maybe have somebody else in between, you know what I mean, have a third party, so that that interaction isn't
Isn't
so
like that interaction isn't head on, I guess.
so it's not direct, so
It's
maybe
not direct. And puppets are usually a great, and I don't know, I talk about it a lot, but puppets are a great tool in
Yeah.
terms of, making those interactions more productive, making those interactions a little bit easier.
more digestible as well.
Absolutely.
More digestible, because I'm telling you now that if there is a third party there, and I in a social situation where I'm socially anxious, when I'm feeling anxiety, there's comfort in numbers almost, right? So there's almost like it's harder for me to be one-on-one, but it's a little easier if there's somebody else there. That puppet, especially if it's somebody, if it's a class favorite, you know what I mean, the class, you know what I mean, like the assistant teacher,
Right.
when it becomes a familiar object, it becomes like that support buddy, right?
Gotcha.
It's a hard one. It's a hard one because you have to balance. It is okay for children to not want to socialize at times.
Mm-hmm.
It is okay for children to have the temperament of being slow to warm up.
Mm-hmm.
And it is okay and developmentally at times, typical for them to demonstrate apprehension, shyness, all of that stuff, right?
Right.
It is not our jobs to coerce, force, pull a child out of their of comfort, right? Because we don't know what trauma comes with that might be attached to this behavior. We have no idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our jobs therein become we have to provide opportunities for experience, right? So open up social opportunities, intentionally create social interactions, and then provide support, right? But if that child doesn't want to, that's something that the family has to dig deeper for further assistance, right? And you can't. Anxiety is one of those things that can present and become worse, if it's not dealt with the right way, right? So as a preschool teacher, an educator, my job is to support, empathetic, to provide opportunities, and to be enthusiastic, right? And to continuously be a motivator. You can do it. I'm so proud of you. Like, oh my God. And point out the small successes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I love the way that you went over there. That was really brave. Because children with social anxiety won't even ask for help. You know, those are the kids that won't even ask, you know,
Mhm.
they're just sitting there and they need help. They won't ask. It's hard for them to communicate in those situations. And physiologically, a lot is going on at
Mm.
that time, right? So they're stuck in that flight, fright, freeze,
Fight or flight.
which is what happens to that little neighbor of yours, Rose.
Right.
And that's a severe case of social anxiety, right? So for that parents, I would create more opportunity for social interaction and understand, you know, that I've still got to stick around. I can't just drop my son off or my daughter off in a social situation like that. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Right. It does. It
Okay.
makes a lot of sense.
And so then we go to that generalized
Generalized
anxiety.
anxiety.
And generalized anxiety that you need, that's not typical, right? That's now it's not occasional anxiety, it's not situational. You know, situational anxiety is like, oh, I have a big test coming up, I'm a little nervous, I'm anxious about it. Let's think about children. Anxiety can happen because they want, when it's almost center time to choose centers, and they really want the dollhouse, or they really want a housekeeping, or they really want blocks. And they know,
Mhm.
because they know the rules, how many people are allowed to blocks? There's only 4 people allowed to blocks. Oh man. And so can you see,
Mhm.
if you have that tendency to kind of get overworked, where a big behavior can come up?
Mhm.
Like me as a teacher, I can understand why a kid's gonna explode if I don't pick him first
To
to
pick
choose,
centers. Yes.
because it's an anxious reaction to, oh my God, I'm not gonna make it to
And
centers.
we see it all the time.
You know, it's not funny, but it is,
It's not
because
funny, but it's just one of those things that we see it so often, and especially like
but we see it so often, and yet few of us respond in a way to help, instead of, oh, he always wants to choose first.
mhm,
How about, I don't know, and if we know that this kid tends to be anxious over this, how about when he comes in the morning, we have an emotional check-in because he's anxious anyway, and we're going to
mhm,
go to the visual schedule, and we're going to go, hey buddy, listen, centers is gonna, you may not be picked first, but I know you like, which one did you want? Because yesterday you wanted, okay, which one did you want today? Okay, you wanted to go where? Okay, good. I don't want you to worry about it. I will make sure that you get to go to blocks. You don't have to worry about it.
yeah, that's
What did I mean? What?
it didn't hurt anybody.
It didn't hurt anybody. I'm still not picking him first because sometimes the lesson is he needs to not be picked first, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes that's the goal. Sometimes we need to teach our students, you have to wait your turn. But if you have an anxious student, why not just call the anxiety? If I can get rid of the anxious part of his brain that says, I need to go to blocks, then he's open to, oh, I can wait my turn because I know I'm going to get to go to blocks. It's okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that generalized anxiety, that's not typical. That's, you wake up in the morning and you have a fear of just fear.
That's
There's no,
everything. And
rhyme,
everything.
there's no reason. There's, you know, and at that point, you know, you need professional help at that point. Therapy, whatever you guys, and to understand that children can suffer from generalized anxiety and depression and all those other mental health issues. So we do need to have an eye out, and we do need to understand what is typical and what is, you know, a red flag,
Mhm.
right? And then there's one more. There's one more anxiety we don't talk about. I've got that. Ready?
What is that one?
Phobias,
Oh,
right?
definitely.
Okay, so there are real phobias out there, and we need to understand, and then we need to be mindful of them. I cannot tell you the damage that can be done if you have a child who has a phobia, I don't know, of roaches, right? Because it really it's a phobia. It's bad. It's not
Well,
that I'm
and
afraid of them.
balloons is another one for some children.
Or clowns or stuff,
Mhm.
things that are triggering like that. You have to be really, because you can cause an anxious, a panic attack,
Mhm.
a severe panic attack from something that triggers a phobic reaction. Oh,
Mhm.
it's severe. So that's the fourth one. But again, I think it's something that we need to go into the classroom understanding that we bring our own anxieties and our own coping skills.
Mhm.
And we now have to understand that these children have their anxieties, their behavior may be their shout for help because they don't have the coping strategies. And so then how do we help them cope? Deep breathing, like all of those self-regulatory, skills, the safe space, all of the things, the yogas, the sensory inputs, all of it work together at that
Mhm.
point to help calm them down. And so yeah, anxiety.
All right. Well, thank you for that information today, Sandy. And if you are still experiencing challenging behaviors with any of your children in the classroom, you can always reach out to Debbie Kay on our warm line, and the number is 954-295-0672. If you found this video and other videos of ours helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, and we will see you back here next time. Have a good day.
Next time, take care.